hasn't yet moved his camel to b6, which is a little bit surprising since it's a very clear idea for silver, I think. So probably on move 8s, and now I don't see much for silver. Maybe just using one step to move the elephant down to g5 to freeze this gold horse and slow down a little bit the gold attack, the gold eastern attack, and maybe with the last three steps move the camel into b6 and advancing the horse to b5. That would seem reasonable for silver.
Yeah, I like the idea. I think I agree with your move there. So, but there's a lot of possibilities when you're in a position like this. There's so many different ways to approach the position. Tuks could be thinking completely along different lines than we are. So he might be thinking still of one defensive option is the camel shift to the east. The other option is the counterattack against the southwest eventually. The other one is trying to slow down the gold horse still after all these moves. Flipping the cat's still an option, but like we mentioned in the previous move, the cat should be okay. If the gold horse gets to h6 and the cat gets to h5, the cat's kind of out of danger thanks to that gold horse. The other thing silver could try to do is if he's worried that the gold horse would get to h6 and then the gold horse would help it reach g6, silver could try to blockade the h6 square by putting rabbits on h6 and h7. But in my experience, that's actually not a good idea because sometimes if you try to blockade the h6 square early with rabbits, your opponent will just flip them down and capture them. So if silver's worried about the gold horse reaching h6, basically his two options are to put his elephant on g5 to prevent that gold horse from reaching g6, or bringing his camel to the east, or maybe starting his own counterattack in the west or something like that.
Yeah, actually I played a very similar game against Tuks, a training game maybe yesterday or 2 days ago. It was basically this very position, and as silver I think he moved his elephant to g5 and his horse to h6 in a kind of somewhat weird pattern, but that was very difficult to break through. I did blockade his horse his elephant by advancing the whole army in the east, but he managed to find a very interesting move against my rabbits, and he's changing his plans there and flipping the cat. So on move 9g, Fritzlein is certainly going to advance his horse to h6, move the cat to h5, or maybe even retreat to h4, and then use a step to cover the f3 trap and avoid the camel capture. And well, gold is proceeding smoothly here. He's managed to reach h6 in the end with his horse, and so I would say gold has a small advantage here, probably.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's funny that we discussed that cat flip a few moves ago, and at the time I think we both agreed that it was going to be better for gold because it builds time for the gold attack to build up, and the threat against the cats are very minimal. So yeah, 9g, there's now a horse in position, so that horse on h6 is now threatening to get to g6. So there's a few ways to defend against that. One is to put the elephant on g5, and the other one is to bring the camel over to the east. But beyond those two, gold's got a huge development lead right now. Sometimes with all the strong pieces in the east, if there were a silver camel on, let's say, b5 and a silver horse on a3, the horse would be threatening. There'd be a counterattack against c3, which is kind of difficult to meet with both horses in the east. But right now, silver doesn't have much of a counterattack because he's way behind in development right now.
Yes, indeed. And even if silver manages to use, say, one step in defense with his elephant to g5 here on move 9s, and then 3 steps to start some kind of counterattack down the b and a file, then gold always has the option of moving his camel towards c3, relocating the camel maybe on b4 or on b3, and making it a tight game in the west with equal forces. And gold would still retain the advantage of having a horse advanced on h6 and silver would have a hard time trying to get some kind of parallel elephant and horse attack around f3, because he would be behind in development and in tempis, as you say, Greg. And so gold would retain a small advantage anyway, even if he had to relocate his camel in the west, which is not clear. He doesn't have to do so if he doesn't want to do so. And so the other option, as you mentioned, is that silver moves his camel towards f6. But once again, that would be some kind of equal forces game with elephant, camel, and horse around f6, and horse versus horse in the west. But still, gold's space advantage would give him a small advantage, and silver would not be able to profit from a possible horse hostage, because he wouldn't have enough space to build a nice horse hostage pattern. And so on 9s, Tuks is remaining flexible with his camel on c6, still eyeing for both wings. And one plan for gold is to just advance pieces and use a blockade on g4, or a phalanx with pieces on f4, g4, g3, and h4. That's what I did against Tuks in my training game yesterday, but that didn't work quite well. So I'm not sure whether Fritzlein has a different idea here. What would you do, Greg, here?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what to do with gold here. These are kind of the reasons why sometimes attacks are tougher than they look. You get these sorts of positions. I don't know. I might either just move my gold horse up to h7 for the time being. That would free my. Oh, so he's just doing a rabbit pull there.
Yeah, he's got some time, since silver doesn't have anything going in the west or yet. So he's got time to pull a rabbit if he wants to do so. That's an interesting plan as well. On the next move, I suppose he's gonna pull this rabbit once more to h6, and then the horse would be frozen on h4, on h5, but still this pattern with a silver rabbit on h6 and a gold horse on h5 is not very comfortable for silver. I find that gold's elephant has some kind of freedom, so he has to stay within reach of f6 in some cases, because silver might get some kind of threats against the horse into the f6 trap, but still gold's elephant has a lot of freedom, and so it's not easy for silver to proceed. So I am still liking gold here.
Yeah, I like gold as well. And silver has to be careful if he wants to dream of like getting some kind of hostage situation on the h6 square with his camel on g6. That would be pretty tricky, because if he moves his camel to e6 this turn and then puts a cat on d6, the cat on d6 would prevent the camel from being pushed west. If he tries something like that, it's still going to be pretty tricky later for him to get that hostage situation. But it's something he might be considering right now. I guess it's kind of no. So he's going to go for the counterattack. So he's doing a counterattack, and he's got kind of the gold attack a little bit bottled up. So here on 11G, we might see the gold camel shifting west, but I'm not sure about that.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I think he's right to attack in the west. I think he should have done so earlier, but I don't think trying to get the horse hostage would give any kind of results, because once gold pulls the rabbit once more, then the h5 horse is absolutely untouchable. The camel cannot reach the h5 horse. So silver is counter-attacking around b3, and as you said, gold has the easy option of moving the camel to c3 and still have a small advantage in the east thanks to his h6 horse anyway, and plan either to continue pulling this rabbit, or maybe just to advance pieces in the east and bury silver's elephants into g5. That would be an option. The other option is to continue pulling a rabbit and remain flexible with the gold camel, eyeing for both wings, so preventing silver from advancing in the east and hopefully also threatening the a4 silver horse. So yeah, here we are probably expecting some kind of camel moves, either all the way to c3 or maybe just to e3 and trying to remain flexible. That would be another option.
Yeah, you're right. If the camel had moved to e6 to try to get a horse hostage, it would have the horse would have just retreated to h5. And then if the elephant had gone to h5, freeze the horse in place, then the gold camel could have charged up and taken g6. So that camel hostage wasn't going to work. So I think it was right for Tuks to start a counterattack. Yeah, so here we can see some of the difficulties of attacking. When there's a defensive silver elephant along the g-file, it prevents the gold camel from participating in an attack, and it also prevents the gold elephant, in this case, from reaching the g5 square. So the eastern attack is bottled up. So I think Fritzlein's doing this right. I think that pulling a rabbit down is, it's going to make his horse safer in the long run. If the gold elephant moves to the west, I think it's better to have the horse on h5 than h6. And plus, he's getting a potential rabbit pull later in the game, and he's starting to move his camel towards the west to fight off that counterattack. So I like that 11g by Fritzlein there.
Yeah, definitely so. I agree. So we are probably going to see a tie in the west with equal forces. That will be camel and horse versus camel and horse. And then in the east, this pattern of gold horse on h5 and silver rabbit on h6 is slightly favorable to gold because gold has more options. Gold's elephant is free, and whenever silver's elephant wants to relocate towards the center, then gold would have a very easy and very quick rabbit pull with very, very quick threats to frame the rabbit into f3. And so silver's elephant is not very mobile now.
What would you this might look a little nuts, but what if the silver camel charged down to b3, pushing the gold horse to the east, and then if the gold elephant came to c4, then the camel could hide on a2 while the elephant used 2 steps to pull the gold horse to g5? Would you say that's a viable plan, or do you think that's too aggressive in this situation?
Oh, that's definitely something to think about. I'm not sure that's the whole debate. Maybe Tuks is actually liking his position, thinking that he's got some threats against the h5 horse, and thus he can charge with the camel. So if Silver wants to claim that he's not in trouble, then yeah, I think he's got to charge into b3. That's the only way I see for Silver to claim anything. Yeah, I'm not too sure of the specifics. I think indeed Gold's elephant would not have had time to capture or hostage the camel. Basically, we might have seen some back and forth moves because Silver would be using 4 steps to scatter away from c3, and Gold's elephant would be using like 4 or 3 steps on each move to relocate towards f6 or relocate towards c3. And I'm not sure who would win that kind of dance. Yeah, I don't know. So instead of on 11s, Tuks is deciding to relocate his elephant in the center, and he is opening himself to a rabbit pull. So Gold could envision just unfreezing the camel and maybe moving the camel to d3, and then using the last 2 steps to pull the rabbit into h5. That would be slightly dangerous maybe because Silver might just push Gold's camel down to d2 into some kind of very passive position and then try to attack around b3. I'm not sure. The other option would be to move the camel directly to c3 and maybe moving the horse to g5 to prevent Silver's horse from charging to g3. Still, I like Gold's position. What do you think, Greg?
Yeah, I still like Gold's position, but this kind of shows how when we talk about, on move 2, move 3, about having Gold having the slight advantage due to the first move, this shows how small that advantage is, because even though Gold seemed to have a big positional advantage earlier, he's still struggling just to build on it right now. So, yeah, I guess the two options, he might want to keep his camel in the east just to prevent a possible Silver horse charge down the east side if the camel moves away. but I think that could be a little too cautious. He might just use put a dog on e2, 2 steps to get the